Are you currently in a long distance relationship and you would like to get your ex back? Hi, this is Ashley from ashleykay.com, where I reveal the raw, naked truth on relationship success. So in this week's video, I wanted to share my top 3 tips on how to save your relationship if you happen to be in a long distance relationship. Now, long distance relationships clearly are a little bit different to local relationships because you often don't have that regular physical proximity, which is often very important in a long-term serious relationship. So all you really have is communication through words, whether that's texting or just talking on the phone, or even if you can see each other and you use webcam or FaceTime, it's still very two-dimensional. It's very flat. You're always talking to them through a screen, through some kind of a barrier, a filter, which I think for some people, that's one of the draws of long-distance relationships, because oftentimes the glue that keeps that relationship together is the emotional connection, is the intimacy, the perceived intimacy that you get, because it's a little bit easier to share all your hopes and dreams and your deep feelings to someone through words or through a screen, because there is kind of a perceived protection there, even though you're being vulnerable. So you can kind of be vulnerable whilst having a bit of protection at the same time, which in a local relationship, shall we say, there isn't that. It's literally, the person standing in front of you. There's no barrier. It can be very intimidating for a lot of people to share that part of themselves so nakedly, So I can definitely see why long distance relationships can appeal to some people, and that's why they fall into them, especially if in their day-to-day life they don't get that with the people around them. So anyway, with that said, let's get into my 3 tips. So tip number 1, I recommend, whether you are long distance or not, that you do no contact and have a bit of space, that a period of time where you do not contact them. This is really, really important, because you really need to allow yourself the time to, heal, to gain emotional clarity, emotional control. So you're not just constantly bombarding them with text after text and probably end up saying something you really regret. And also because if you keep doing that, sooner or later you will annoy them to the point of being blocked. But if you're in a long distance, I don't recommend you do the space for too long, because all you really have is talking through text or the phone through words. So, by nature, you already have that space. You always, the pressure of long distance is that the pressure of the distance. You always have distance there. So you don't want to not talk to them for too long. So if in a normal local relationship, you would go 1 month no contact, then in long distance, I would cut that in half and say 2 weeks. Because if you go from talking to them, texting them every day, and them being used to hearing from you every single day, to all of a sudden nothing for a week, they're going to feel it. It's going to feel different, and they will probably start to miss you in the same way as if you were in a local relationship. Tip number 2, you want to make sure when you do re-establish contact that you don't jump immediately back to how you used to talk to them before the breakup. So once again, the draw of long distance relationships is that intimacy, is being able to share things deeply, is being able to say things that you feel you can't say or are more afraid to say in a normal relationship or local relationship. So a lot of times people when they reestablish contact, they go back to trying to, probably without even realizing it, speaking to their ex like their boyfriend and girlfriend still. But that will freak them out. That's going to make your ex pull back and probably block you again, or go completely cold on you, because part of the reason they probably didn't want that relationship is something about that intimacy, that closeness is now starting to become a negative, right? It's becoming a negative, so they don't want to be drawn back into what feels like a relationship. So instead of, going back to, high levels of intimacy, you want to drop it down. And in my program, the X Recovery System, I talk about the different levels of conversational intimacy, and you should really drop it down to level 1. So level 1 would be you just talking about the weather, what you saw on the weekend, things external that doesn't really have anything to do with you per se, nothing personal to do with you, just basically safe topics. So things you would talk to strangers about, or acquaintances, people that you're not very close to, you want to speak kind of on that level. Take all the emotional, personal stuff out of it, because that's what's going to freak your ex out. That includes calling them cute little nicknames that you used to call them, flirting with them, being too overly sexual, or anything like that. Even though you feel like that's what you naturally want to do, you really need to change the way you think, because if you just still think of them as a boyfriend, girlfriend, once again, they're going to run. They're just going to be scared off and run away from you. So you want to try to avoid that. What you want to do instead is to turn up the dial of intimacy slowly, okay? It's kind of like if you have a scalding hot bath, you don't want to just dump your ex into it straight away. You want to slowly get them to dip their toes into it and slowly get used to the temperature before they fully, sink into that hot bath. So that will be a lot more comfortable for them, and that's how you want to go about it. And if there is a real connection there, and if you can keep the interactions always pleasant, always positive, okay, don't bring up anything negative, then they will naturally slip back into that wanting to be close emotionally, because that's what drew them in the first place. Okay, so the last tip number 3, is you must talk about and deal with when or how the distance is going to end. So a lot of people seem to fudge this one, because the distance is kind of like this very fuzzy, abstract, cloudy thing in the future. It's kind of like, okay, I want to be sure we really can work before I turn my world upside down to move to where your partner is, or have them do the same thing for you. So you have to realize there is a certain amount of sacrifice you need to make for that relationship, and often your ex too have to make a fair bit of sacrifice for you. So like I said, for some people, long distance relationships can be a draw because of the emotional intimacy, but where it often falls apart is if they need to, leave their family, their town, their house, their job, everything that they've built up where they live, and to sacrifice all that for the relationship. Sometimes that's not something a lot of people are willing to do. And that is also a test of, I guess, the true strength of your relationship. Every relationship has an inherent strength value, let's say. So on the surface, it may seem like everything's great and you have a really strong bond, but how you really know you have a strong bond is how the relationship survives or not survives obstacles. So if your relationship hits the first couple of bumps and it just kind of crumbles, then that relationship wasn't really strong to begin with. Really true strong relationships, if you really want to make it work, if your partner really wanted to make it work, you will make it work. People have moved across the world, packed everything up, moved, sacrificed everything for their partner, because if it really is special and something that you both want, you're going to make it happen. It doesn't matter what obstacles or perceived obstacles are in the way. But if someone isn't willing to do that, then that relationship inherently didn't have any real strength behind it, any solidity behind it. So that's good to know too, so you don't waste time on something that really wasn't going to lead to anything anyway. So that's important to know. So that's basically my 3 tips for this week for long distance relationship couples. So I hope that's been helpful. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel, and I'll be back with another video soon. Bye.